If you want a productive, stress-free relationship with your team, you must do these three things. Trust is a driver of credibility. This is one of the primary currencies that a leader has to create influence with their teams. If you don't have trust, then you don't have influence, and you likely don't have a team that's performing to their fullest potential. My name is Brandon Allen. I'm the founder of New Work Revolution, and for the past 15 years, I have helped leaders grow beyond their profits, which means that we help leaders make money while also reducing their stress. So when I talk about credibility as a currency, think about times where you've been out in public and you've observed a parent trying to discipline their kids. The grocery store is one of the great places to really see this in action. And you get a parent who tells their kid, if you do that one more time, we're going to go to the car. The problem is they've already done that 13 times and the kid isn't listening. And as a parent, I can totally appreciate and relate where that comes from, but this child now knows that your words are not credible. When you say we're going to go to the car if I do something and it doesn't happen, I know you're not serious about it. So here's three things that I want to talk to you about to really help you drive home this trust as credibility as an influence builder in your leadership. So the first thing I want to talk about is having rigor in your logic. People want to know on your team, have you thought some things through? I know a lot of visionary business owners who they fly by the seat of their pants. They never met an idea they didn't love. So one day they have a whim to just run 100 miles an hour that way. And then the next day they just felt like, you know what? Why not just go ahead and run 100 miles an hour the other way? Not only is that stressful for your team, but it doesn't necessarily get you to where you want to be as a leader either. But when your team sees behavior like that, they stop doing what you say you're going to do. I was really bad at this early on in my leadership career. I used to come up with these grand plans for how we were going to be successful in any given month. And by about Wednesday of that month, I had completely abandoned most of them. And within a week, almost all of them were gone. What my team realized is the things that came out of my mouth weren't very well thought out. I didn't really think it through, like, could I really implement this? Could I really do it? And so a lot of times they would not engage in those things at all. They would just wait until I forgot. If that sounds familiar to you, this is an opportunity to do something different. So ask yourself when you're making decisions, what is the process that you utilize to make a sound decision? Everyone's going to have different criteria of what this looks like. There's no right or wrong answer to it, and there's a ton of good resources out there to help you make decisions. When business owners have asked me about this in the past, I use a 3-step simple criteria to see if an idea is even worthy about talking further about. So the criteria is this: does it fit my budget? Does it serve my values? And does it help me achieve an objective for this calendar year? If the answer is no, I don't move forward. There's no more discussion that needs to be had. Now, if the answer is yes, we might do a little bit more digging and talking and discussing about an idea to really determine if that's an idea that we want to move forward with or not. So whatever your criteria is, have some criteria and let your team know what that criteria is as well, so that they know that you have standards when you make a decision on something. Another thing that can really help you in building rigor in your logic is to get other people involved. Get your team involved in decision making. I know so many leaders who go the rugged individual route with decision making, and they make all the decisions. And the problem with that is your team resents the fact that you've made a decision that impacts them without discussing it with them at all. One of the arguments I hear against this from leaders is, well, what if I don't like their idea, Brandon? Why would I ask them for their input if they're going to give me some crappy ideas that I don't want to implement? Here's the thing about that. Number one, I doubt that's going to happen across the board. Your team is going to come up with some things that you probably didn't think about that are actually good ideas. The second thing is this: you don't have to take every idea that your team gives you. It's not reasonable, right? We don't even implement all of our own ideas. Why would I implement all of someone else's? So you don't have to accept every idea, but you know what people want? They want to be heard. They want to know that you considered them before you made this decision. And when it comes to rigorously thinking about what you're doing, your team can appreciate the fact that you did it by including them in that decision-making process at some level. So if you really want to drive home trust and credibility, think about how you make decisions and think about where you can be a more thorough and also collaborative decision maker in your team. The second area is authenticity. Here's the thing about this. We all have flaws as leaders. You have flaws, I have flaws. The question is, are you aware of what those are? And I know a lot of leaders who show up to work day in and day out and they pretend that they don't have flaws. And the reason for that is we were taught when we were younger that leaders don't have flaws or that leaders don't show vulnerability. But the reality reality is if we really want to connect with people in an authentic way, showing that we understand our flaws and being open to the things that we don't know about ourselves is really important. So it's not only important to talk about and discuss openly the things that I know I struggle with, it's also important to be open with other people to know that, you know what, there's some things about myself that I don't know that maybe you see that you could help me improve and do better by just pointing it out to me and being aware. Now, I know a lot of leaders who don't like to think about the fact that they have blind spots, but here's the thing about it. It's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle. People know how you show up even before sometimes you know it. I want to have a process in place where people can bring that to me, where I can receive it and get in front of it before it becomes a bigger issue. And I know leaders sometimes they say things like, well, Brandon, I know what my blind spots are. No, you don't. If you knew what your blind spots were, they're not blind spots. So don't kid yourself. There's things about you that you don't know that other people do at work, that having some open lines of communication in an authentic way would allow you to learn about and eliminate those distractions and that interference from your leadership and your organization. It's a huge tool. So there's a couple other things around authenticity I wanted to talk about. Confrontation is the other one. If the purpose of confrontation is to restore and solve problems and get people back into integrity, I want to be honest with people when they are in those places. I know leaders who are gutless, who will not talk to their team when they are screwing up. Not only does people who are screwing up not appreciate that eventually when they get fired, even though they didn't know they were doing a bad job, but the people who are great performers on your team resent it too, because they're like, how come you don't hold people accountable? I don't want to be a part of an organization that doesn't hold people accountable. So what do great people do? They quit. Confrontation is about being open and honest about where you're at and how other people are doing. And if you think your team doesn't want to know how they're doing, you're wrong. They do. They 100% do. Now, some people may not want to hear it and they may not like it, but they want to know, am I hitting the mark? Your team wants to know that. The other side of this is gratitude, showing gratitude. So we confront, but hopefully more often we appreciate. That piece is so important. And here's the thing that's going to dictate whether you're a good giver of gratitude or not. It's if you're a good receiver of it. So if you're someone like me who struggled with receiving positive feedback and praise, where you've deflected, been a self-deprecator around people giving you positive feedback, just know that that might be inhibiting your ability to give other people positive feedback. If something like that makes me uncomfortable, and I know a lot of people who say, Brandon, I get so uncomfortable when people praise me. I totally get that. But if that makes you uncomfortable, you're not going to want to do it because your brain says, God, you know what? Receiving feedback is really uncomfortable. Why would we give that to other people? We wouldn't. So look and examine at your process for giving positive feedback. Are you being grateful? Are you giving gratitude to your team? And you should be doing this all the time. Now, the one thing I will say about this is don't force it. Don't make it inauthentic. I used to have a boss that would walk around all the time in one of my offices and he would say, nice job. And the way he said it was so condescending. I couldn't tell, are you mocking me or do you really mean it, but you just sound condescending? But he said it so much, I thought, man, either I'm doing a horrendous job or this guy just really doesn't really clue into his vocal tone and he's not really aware of how he's showing up there. So to be authentic, we want to let people know where they stand in a real and positive way, which means that we want to give people feedback that is critical and positive at all times. We want people to know where they stand. The last area is empathy. And this is really about people asking the question, do you understand me? Do you get me? Now, there's a couple things that we really need to be mindful of if we want to be empathetic. And I'll tell you this, when I took the emotional intelligence test the first time years ago as a leader, my empathy score was horrendously low. It was so bad. Now, luckily, that empathy score has raised slowly but surely over the years where I've been better at this particular area. But one of the things that we have to really be careful of is, number one, our desire to be right. As a leader, we get so into our own ego and we feel like we got to be right about everything. We can really create a lack of empathy by just our desire to want to be right, which means we argue with our team members or we try to force decisions down their throat because we're the only ones who are capable of knowing anything. Be careful about being right. And the other thing that kills empathy is judgment. I talk about this a lot in coaching. So I do a lot of coach training around coaching leaders on how to coach people well. You can't coach, teach, train, and educate people well if you're judging them. And the problem with judgments are that judgments are conclusions. So if I think someone at work is lazy, if I think they're incompetent, if I think they don't care, that judgment holds me back from really embracing and learning more about them. If you saw that episode of Ted Lasso, I think it was in the first season where he was playing darts with Rupert. I really love that scene. And if you haven't seen it, you You can go find it on YouTube. But, in that moment, Ted Lasso said, you know what? I learned that you should be curious instead of judgmental. And I think that's such a powerful leadership tool, to be curious about other people. If you don't like what's happening in your organization, if you don't like how a team member is performing, be curious about that. Ask yourself, what is this really about? There's the things that you see on the surface about people. There's the things that happen underneath that you miss. It's really important to get to the root of certain issues. And we can only do that if we're operating from a place of empathy, where we're really trying to understand someone else. We're really trying to get them and what they're really about. So when someone in your organization doesn't show up the way that you think they should, rather than place a label on them and judge the situation like you already know, ask yourself this question: what is this really about? What is there for me to learn about this that would help us work together better? The second thing, and this is so important, is to understand the standards that your team brings to work. Everyone has goals that they come to work for. Those goals are going to be different from yours. The way you show up to work is going to be different than the way someone else shows up to work. Someone else's work ethic is going to be different from yours. Someone else's caring and understanding is going to be different from yours. The one thing that was the hardest for me to learn as a leader is how to appreciate people's differences and how to discover what really motivates other people by learning and knowing their standards. I have standards that I bring to work. Other people have standards that they bring to work. They're not always the same. I want to manage people to their standards. If I'm going to be empathetic with other people, I'm going to understand what really makes them tick and what's really important to them, so that we can work together in a powerful way. So think about these things. Think about your thinking, your authenticity, your empathy. Where can you drive and build trust in your organization? And when we do this right, this requires us to do leadership by design versus leadership by default. This requires an intentional approach to leadership that will grow results for your team. If, as you're listening to this video and watching this video, you feel like, hey, my business really isn't in a place that I want it to be, it's not growing at the level that I would like it to, go to the comment or the description here on this video, and you can check out the link for all the free tools and resources that we have for your business. If you found this video helpful, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe so you don't miss the next video we put out.